I'm Kaylee, and today I'm going to be giving some book recommendations for a lot of different genres. I actually saw Murphy do this like months and months ago. I think it was like last year that she did this video recommending books from every genre that she reads, because it would be silly to do a book recommendation from a genre that you don't even read that genre. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 genres, and I'm gonna recommend a few books to you. Before we get into the recommendations, I'm gonna reach back here to our Booktuber Shoutout book, and we're gonna shout out somebody randomly. Today's shout out goes to Reading with Tatiana. So I will leave a link down in the description, and be sure to go over and subscribe to them. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to this channel and give this video a thumbs up if you just read a lot of genres like I do. The genre that I know you guys all want to hear about first is, of course, classics. And so I'm going to recommend two of my very favorite classics, which is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Not that it's necessarily a perfect book, because it certainly isn't. It has things that annoy me and things that are problems, but there's just so many good things in there. I just love Jane's character so much. She's so amazing. And the writing is just so powerful. I will never not love Jane Eyre. And the second one might be a little bit controversial. It's David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. David Copperfield has remained my favorite of all of Charles Dickens's work. And the reason I say controversial is because it tends to be very polarizing. You either super love it or you super hate it. And I definitely fall into the love side of David Copperfield. I can't quite even put my finger on why I love David Copperfield so much. It's a coming of age story. There are just so many twists and turns in the plot and so many lovable characters. It's so funny and so heart-wrenching, and it's just so much goodness in David Copperfield. The next genre is fantasy. I'm going to recommend Dealing with Dragons. It's actually a quartet series by Patricia C. Reed. Princess Cimarine is captured by a dragon, but she doesn't want to be rescued by a knight. She likes living with the dragon. She and the dragon become friends, and they have adventures, and it's all kind of fun stuff. It just takes all these fairy tale tropes and flips them upside down, and it's so funny. Every book in this series is just so interesting and so hilarious and so much fun. And the other fantasy that I'm going to recommend is The Blue Sword by Robin McKinley. There are so many amazing stories by Robin McKinley. She just writes some of my favorite fantasy books. But out of all her works, somehow I think The Blue Sword is the one that I really love the best. As with so many things that I truly love, it's very difficult to really put my finger quite on why this one stands out above the crowd in my mind, why this is the book that I recommend, and why this is one that I love so much. It just has all the elements that you could possibly want from a fantasy. It has all the things. It has the adventure, it has the emotion, it has the character growth, it has like the world building and the history and the magic. It just has it all. It's just so good. Our next category is middle grade. I'm going to recommend the Myrtle series, which starts with Premeditated Myrtle. This is by Elizabeth C. Bunce. Myrtle is a young lady growing up in Victorian England, and everybody wants her to be very prim and proper, but she just wants to solve murder mysteries. It is hilarious. It is so clever. The mysteries are so mysterious. It is just a complete delight. And I also recommend The Mistmantle Chronicles by M.I. McAllister. This is about a young squirrel, and there is a prophecy concerning him, how he will one day bring back the kingdom. I love a good prophecy. I love animal characters. I love those underdog stories where they go on adventures and have some kind of quest, and they come out on top. But there's just something absolutely enchanting about Mistmantle. It's delightful, it's imaginative, it's clever and funny and emotional, and there's something just like, I don't know, mysterious and enchanting and mystic about it that I really, really love. Then we have a couple of young adult books, and of course, it's young adult fantasy because pretty much every other genre or age group that I'm talking about, somewhere it all comes back to fantasy, doesn't it? I can't help it. Fantasy is my kryptonite. It's my one weakness. So we have the Books of Bayern series, which starts with The Goose Girl by Shannon Hale. The first book is a retelling of The Goose Girl, and then the rest of the books in the series just follow different various characters. But I just love this whole fairy tale world and the magic and the world building and the characters and just everything. I also love the way that the series will take this side character who is just kind of this sort of throwaway person in the background and then gives them their own special story and their own backstory and their own character growth. And the way that all these different stories through the series intertwine is just so delightful. The next one, I'm not really sure if it's technically middle grade or young adult. I kind of want to put it into young adult because it deals with some tough themes, and that's the Young Wizard series by Diane Duane, and it starts with So You Want to Be a Wizard. Every single book that I've read so far in this series has completely broken my heart and then repaired it and then broken my heart again and then repaired it back again. This is about a young girl who finds a book entitled So You Want to Be a Wizard, and she opens it up and is magically endowed with magical powers, and she has to learn how to harness those powers and how to do spells. And of course there is evil magic in the world that they have to combat against. What I love is that using magic is like a spiritual experience in this world. And so if you use your magic for evil, you're literally hurting your own soul. And if you use it for good, then your soul is enlightened. So there's just a lot of different layers of really deep themes about good and evil and life and death and things like that. Every single book is just so thoughtful and full of wisdom and full of like cosmic questions that really make you think about life and purpose and meaning beyond our life. What happens to us when we die? Do we go to heaven? Do we go to hell? Each action that we take, is it lightening our soul or is it darkening our soul? So many great stories in this series. It's just so good. But I get such a horrible book hangover after reading one of them, and then like nothing else that I read is half as good. It's just so good and so immersive that you will get a terrible book hangover after reading these, which is why I haven't finished the series yet, because I keep spacing them out. I read like one a year or something because my heart just cannot handle all of the emotion that comes with a Diane Duane book. The next genre is mystery and spies. So I'm kind of just putting mystery and spies together in a general mystery genre. So of course, in the mystery genre, I have to have the queen of all mysteries, Agatha Christie, and my favorite Agatha Christie book is The Man in the Brown Suit. I have already talked about The Man in the Brown Suit so much last year when I was doing all my Agatha Christie challenge back in 2021. So I'll just give you guys a link to my review of Man in the Brown Suit, and you can go over there and watch that video to see why Man in the Brown Suit is my favorite Agatha Christie, why it is so amazing and fantastic and fun. And I do have a favorite spy novel, The 39 Steps by John Buchan. The 39 Steps is about a young man who kind of gets embroiled in the intrigue of international espionage. It's really too complex to even begin to describe the story. There's just so many threads and so many different things happening, but I love the complexity of it. John Buchan just writes such fantastic stories where every little detail matters. Our next category is poetry, and in my mind, my favorite poet, the king of all poets, is John Milton. It just doesn't get any better than Milton. My favorite poem of his is Comus, which is about a young lady who gets lost in the woods and she has to be rescued by her brothers, but they're not doing a very good job at rescuing. And of course, my other favorite John Milton is Paradise Lost. There's a reason why it's just so famous, is because it's amazing. It's powerful and beautiful and terrifying and amazing. I think probably another one of my favorite poets is Emily Dickinson. I don't always understand Emily Dickinson, but I always enjoy it. It always gives me something to sort of ponder and be like, what does that mean? And then, what does that mean to me? It always gives me something to think about. Our next category is romance. I don't read a lot of romance. And when I do, it's very innocent and sweet romance, very PG romance. One of my favorite romance books is Patricia by Grace Livingston Hill. This is about a young lady from a wealthy family, and they want her to grow up and marry some, wealthy young man and be prominent in society. But at a school picnic, she meets a young farmer boy, and they have this instant connection, and then she doesn't see him again for years. And it's all about how, will she ever find her farmer boy again? There is something so utterly delightful about Patricia, because it's not just about her finding her farmer boy again. It's about her breaking out of this cage of society that she has grown up in and becoming her own person and making her own decisions and finding her own happiness, even if that doesn't look like the happiness that society is telling her that she needs. So many layers in that story, and I love it. Another favorite of mine is Kilmeny of the Orchard by L.M. Montgomery. This is from the author of Anne of Green Gables, and this is one of my favorite stories from her. Kilmeny has grown up with this weird sort of like psychological something that makes her mute. And she meets the new schoolmaster and learn to communicate with one another. And of course they fall in love. It's so sweet and innocent and delightful, and it's amazing to see the way that Kilmeny gets past this disability that she has, and she is such a vibrant character. There's just so much depth in there, and so many different layers to the story as she kind of confronts the past of her family and learns to heal and to move on and all that wonderful stuff. It's so good. The next category is adventure, and oh my gosh, this is so hard to choose because there are so many of my favorite adventure stories that I have a lot of favorite adventure stories. The one I'm going to talk about today, though, is Pimpernel and Rosemary by Baroness Emuska Orczy. I'm not sure if I really want to say, this is my favorite adventure, because this isn't necessarily a favorites list, this is a recommendations list. So these are more like ones that I feel are accessible to everyone, maybe? Anyway, The Pimpernel and Rosemary is part of the Scarlet Pimpernel series. Scarlet Pimpernel, of course, is set back in the French Revolution. But then Pimpernel and Rosemary is actually set, I think, right after World War I, or right at the beginning of World War II, or somewhere around there. And there is a character in this book who is like a descendant of the Pimpernel from back in the French Revolution. Wait, maybe I should have put this one into the Spies category, because there's a lot of espionage with World War II, right? So there's all this adventure and intrigue and espionage and everything. And the descendant of the Pimpernel has a childhood friend, Rosemary, that he's secretly in love with, but she's engaged to another man. So not only do you get all the fun adventure and the espionage and stuff, but there's this lovely little romance kind of in the background, sort of. It's just so much fun. It's just a fun, rollicking adventure. For the sci-fi category, I just have to recommend Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. I mean, I know everybody knows Ender's Game, and there's the movie, and it's extremely popular, but there's a reason for that. It's really, really good. And I have been slowly continuing with the Ender series and reading more books from Orson Scott Card. Ender is chosen to be part of a space training program, and he goes to space. And it's all about how he is the underdog, but he's trying to succeed in this space training academy and everything. It's really exciting. And then I have a book to recommend from the Christian genre. One of my favorite books about Christianity that I have read is Jesus the King by Timothy Keller. I mean, I've been in church since I was 2 weeks old. My dad is a preacher. So I've read a lot of Christian books, a lot of Christian apologetics and Christian devotionals and commentary books and all kind of stuff. So it's not very often that I read something that really makes me think about my faith in a new way and kind of points out some different perspective about God or about Christ that makes me think of something and go, wow, I never thought of that before. But this book definitely did that. I really love the way that the author kind of talks about Christ from this earthly perspective, because he was human, but then also talks about Christ from this cosmic, eternal perspective, because he was also 100% God. So just the mixture of those two different perspectives and different attributes of Christ, it blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind, and it just strengthened my faith, just made me appreciate Jesus even more. I 1000% recommend this book. The next genre is history, and for this one I have What Jane Austen Ate and Charles Dickens Knew. This is by Daniel Poole. So this just talks about the Regency and Victorian eras and, just the general things about how people lived back then, the sort of clothing they wore, how they managed their money, what they ate, just all kinds of things, just everything you can imagine about the Regency and Victorian eras. It's all in there. So interesting. And then for biography, I have Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Martyr, Prophet, Spy by Eric Metaxas. Bonhoeffer was a preacher during World War II in Germany. He was German, and he was part of the German underground resistance against the Nazis. He had an absolutely inspiring and tragic life, and just such a mountain of a man, just an absolute inspiration of faith from Bonhoeffer. Just an incredible life. If you've not read about Bonhoeffer, you really, really should. Even if you're not a Christian, you will get so inspired about the way that this man and the people around him and his family and friends and everything, how they banded together to resist the Nazis and everything. Just so incredible. Then for the self-help category, we have The Empowered Highly Sensitive Person. This is by Amanda Castle. So I am a highly sensitive person, and there's a lot of challenges that come with that. It's kind of like a personality trait, like being introverted or extroverted. And this book is all about how to navigate those challenges and how to embrace your high sensitivity as your superpower, and how to appreciate it, even though sometimes it feels like it's just detrimental. Actually, there are a lot of things that come with high sensitivity that make me a better teacher, that make me a better friend, that make me a more compassionate person, all kinds of stuff like that. So it talks about how to manage some of the negative things, how to embrace the more positive things. It's just so encouraging. Okay, and the last category is health. And for this, I have Yin Yoga by Diane Paylor. I love doing yoga, and Yin Yoga is very, very slow yoga. Well, you'll just sit in a pose for 5 to 7 minutes. So it can be very relaxing and meditative, and it really gets into like the deep tissue muscles. This book especially has really great instructions and illustrations, and there's something about the design of this book that is just so calming. So it kind of gets you in the mood for something very soft and meditative like Yin Yoga. And those are all the book recommendations that I have for you today. I'm sure that as soon as I finish filming, I will think of other recommendations like, oh, I shouldn't have recommended that one. I should have recommended this instead because that one would be better. I don't know. But at the moment, these are just the books that came to mind that I thought, hey, this is a book I like. I wish other people would read it too. And that's what you get. Please leave me a comment down below and give us some recommendations. What are some of your favorite books? Books that you just wish that everybody would read in your favorite genres. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and remember, the right book in the right hands at the right time can change the world.